the monarchy provides, with the Constitution, a degree of long-term stability that is actually quite hard to come by any other way.
Imagine being the most powerful woman in Britain, a queen crowned before the world, seated beside a king. And yet, finding yourself standing outside a locked door on a royal estate, turned away not by a guard, not by protocol, but by a lawyer's letter bearing your sister-in-law's name. That is not a scene from a period drama. That is reportedly what is unfolding right now inside one of the most storied and secretive properties in the entire British monarchy. And the woman who ordered that door sealed shut, Princess Anne, the woman left standing outside it, Queen Camilla. This is not simply a dispute over summer accommodation. This is a battle over power, loyalty, legacy, and the unwritten rules of a family that has held a kingdom together for centuries, rules that are now, for the first time, being replaced by legal documents. To fully grasp the weight of what is happening, you have to understand what Sandringham actually represents, because dismissing this as a squabble over a holiday home would be like dismissing the crown jewels as costume jewelry. Sandringham is not just a property, it is, in many ways, the emotional heartbeat of the British monarchy. Stretching across 20,000 acres of rolling Norfolk parkland, approximately 110 miles north of London, the Sandringham Estate is one of the most privately significant pieces of land in all of England. It was first acquired in 1862 by Queen Victoria as a gift for her heir, the future King Edward VII, and it has remained in the personal possession of the reigning monarch ever since. That distinction matters enormously. Unlike Buckingham Palace or Windsor Castle, Sandringham does not belong to the Crown Estate. It does not belong to the government or the nation. It belongs to the king personally, passing from one sovereign to the next like a family heirloom of incomprehensible scale. When Queen Elizabeth II drew her final breath in September 2022, Sandringham passed quietly but definitively into King Charles's hands. It is the place where the royal family gathers every Christmas, where Elizabeth spent her last peaceful days, and where Prince Philip chose to retreat in his final years, living quietly at Wood Farm on the estate's grounds. These are not trivial details. They are the emotional geography of a family. Beyond the main house, the estate is home to a constellation of historic properties: Wood Farm, Anmer Hall, where Prince William and Princess Catherine raised their children, Park House, which stands as the birthplace of Princess Diana, the Folly, and several working farms, including Marsh Farm, where the disgraced Andrew Mountbatten Windsor now resides, after being removed from Royal Lodge in Windsor. For generations, different members of the royal family have maintained informal but deeply understood arrangements over which parts of the estate belong in spirit, if not in law, to whom. These were never written contracts. They were something rarer and more fragile, a family's word. But in 2026, a family's word is no longer enough. When members of the royal family begin hiring solicitors to document access to rooms they have used freely for decades, it signals something profound and troubling. The gentlemen's agreements have not just frayed, they have collapsed entirely. Before we get to the lawyers and the locked doors, we need to talk about the relationship at the center of this storm, because the tension between Princess Anne and Queen Camilla did not begin with a property dispute. It did not begin with Charles's marriage to Camilla in 2005, though that event poured fuel on an already smoldering fire. This rivalry traces its roots back nearly 5 decades to the 1970s, when a young Camilla Parker Bowles first entered Charles's life, and in doing so set in motion a chain of events that would shatter one of the most beloved marriages in royal history and leave wounds that have never fully healed. Princess Anne is, by almost every credible account, the hardest working member of the British royal family. Year after year, she undertakes more official engagements than any other working royal. She is disciplined in a way that borders on relentless, stoic in the face of pressure, and militarily precise in her sense of royal duty. She does not court the press. She does not perform for public sympathy. She is, in the truest sense of the phrase, the backbone of the modern monarchy, and she has always understood her role as one of quiet, fierce protection of the institution and the family within it. Camilla's entry into that family was, to put it gently, complicated. She arrived not as a celebrated bride, but as a figure many blamed, if fairly or not, for the destruction of Charles and Diana's marriage. For years, she was deeply unpopular, with the British public, with several senior royals, and most persistently with Anne. Camilla has worked extraordinarily hard since then to reshape that narrative. And by most public measures, she has succeeded. She has become an effective, visible, and respected queen consort. But the private temperature between her and Anne has never truly warmed. Those close to the royal household describe their dynamic in 2026 as a Cold War, one that simmers for long stretches before erupting into something sharper. As one well-placed insider described it to a major outlet, Anne believes Camilla is overstepping her role, while Camilla views Anne as someone who has never been able to separate personal loyalty from sound institutional judgment. Two strong women, two competing visions of what the monarchy should be and who should hold influence within it. And now, for the first time, that conflict has acquired a physical address. To understand how a property dispute became a legal confrontation, you have to follow the thread back to the man currently living in modest seclusion at Wood Farm, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly the Duke of York. In October 2025, King Charles took the decisive and historic step of formally stripping his younger brother of all remaining royal titles, honors, and his right to reside in any Crown Estate property. The decision came after years of escalating scandal, beginning with Andrew's catastrophic television interview about his relationship with convicted offender Jeffrey Epstein, and deepening with the posthumous publication of a memoir by Epstein survivor Virginia Giuffre that cast new and damning light on Andrew's conduct. Removed from Royal Lodge, Andrew was relocated to Wood Farm, a far more modest residence tucked away on the Sandringham Estate. Then on the morning of February 19, 2026, his 66th birthday, unmarked police vehicles descended on Sandringham. Officers conducted simultaneous searches at Wood Farm in Norfolk and Royal Lodge in Berkshire. Andrew was taken to Elcham Police Station, where he was held for approximately 11 hours before being released under investigation on suspicion of misconduct in public office. It was a moment without modern precedent. The first arrest of a sibling of the reigning monarch since Queen Elizabeth I had her sister detained in 1554. The institution trembled. King Charles issued a carefully worded statement: "The law must take its course." And it was at this precise moment that Princess Anne stepped forward, not for the cameras, not for the press, but firmly and privately into the center of the storm. According to multiple sources, Anne has been quietly but ferociously advocating for Andrew's basic human dignity throughout this ordeal. She reportedly raised concerns about his rapidly deteriorating mental health directly with King Charles and Prince William, becoming, in the words of one source, the driving force behind a private family effort to ensure that the institution does not completely abandon him. Queen Camilla's position on this has reportedly been the opposite. She is said to have taken a hard line against any accommodation for Andrew, viewing any public or private expression of family solidarity toward him as a direct threat to the monarchy's reputation. One palace source stated that Camilla was genuinely appalled that Anne was pursuing this at all. And it is from this fundamental disagreement over a disgraced brother, over loyalty, over the limits of institutional duty, that the conflict over Sandringham itself was born. So what exactly has Princess Anne's legal team done? And why does it matter enough to block a queen's summer plans? Sources indicate that Anne, acting through her legal representatives, has formally asserted and documented her household's private use rights over a specific wing of the Sandringham Estate. This is not a claim of ownership. Anne is not attempting to seize property that belongs to the king. What she is doing is something more subtle and in many ways more powerful. She is converting decades of informal family understanding into formal legal documentation. In large hereditary estates across Britain, this kind of move is not without precedent. Multi-generational families frequently establish formal licenses to occupy, customary use agreements, and time-sharing arrangements through solicitors, particularly when informal arrangements begin to break down. What makes this case remarkable is not the legal mechanism, it is the identity of the parties involved and the statement it sends through the corridors of one of the world's most famous families. By creating a legal paper trail, Anne has accomplished two things simultaneously. She has made her household's access to those spaces essentially impossible to quietly override or reassign. And she has sent an unmistakable message to Camilla and to the broader palace hierarchy. This is my space, established in law, and I will not be displaced from it. The timing is no accident. Sandringham House closes to the public each year between mid-July and early August, during which the royal family traditionally uses the estate for private summer gatherings. Prior to Anne's legal move, there had been quiet internal discussions about Camilla potentially using a private wing of the estate for an extended personal retreat during this period. A secluded summer sanctuary separate from the king, who typically travels to Balmoral in Scotland for the warmer months. By acting when she did, Anne effectively removed that possibility from the table. Sources describe Camilla as furious, though the palace has made no public comment. A door has been closed, and a queen is standing outside it. To understand what Camilla has lost in this exchange, you need to understand just how central private space has always been to her sense of self, and how that foundation has recently shifted beneath her feet. Unlike Charles, whose identity is deeply intertwined with land and estate, Camilla has historically carved out her own independence through personal property. For decades, that independence had a name and address. Raymill House, a stunning country estate in Wiltshire that she acquired during her divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles in 1995. It was her sanctuary, a place where she could simply be Camilla, not queen, not consort, not the woman the tabloids had written into infamy, just herself. In early 2026, reports emerged that Camilla had quietly transferred ownership of Raymill House, a move that attracted considerable attention because it suggested a deeper integration of her personal life into the royal structure, a relinquishing of that private refuge she had protected for 30 years. Around the same time, King Charles purchased a neighbouring Wiltshire property for £3 million, further intertwining their private lives in that corner of England. With Raymill in transition and Balmoral firmly established as Charles's summer domain, Sandringham was emerging as an increasingly compelling alternative for Camilla, a place where she could enjoy the estate's celebrated gardens, maintain a lower public profile through the summer months, and hold a presence separate from the relentless demands of the London calendar. The specific wing Anne's lawyers have now documented sits at the heart of those plans. It is a section of the estate with historic ties to Anne's household arrangements, spaces that Anne's family has informally used during visits for years. Whether Camilla had any formal intentions to use those spaces, or whether Anne's move is primarily a preemptive legal strategy, the outcome is identical. A door has been sealed, the papers have been filed, and in a family that once settled everything over private dinners and unspoken agreements, the arrival of solicitors changes everything. There is perhaps no more uncomfortable position in the British monarchy right now than the one occupied by King Charles himself. He is a man caught between two of the most strong-willed women in his life, navigating a family in crisis while managing a serious cancer diagnosis that he publicly acknowledged in December 2025, when he announced he would be scaling back certain treatment commitments. His brother has been arrested. His son Harry remains estranged from the family, entangled in an ongoing legal battle with British tabloids that keeps the family perpetually exposed to public scrutiny. And now, his sister and his wife are locked in a legal and deeply personal dispute over the family estate that has been the Windsor home for generations. Those close to the palace say that Charles is deeply reluctant to intervene. He values Anne's loyalty with an intensity that has only deepened through his illness. She has been one of his most consistent and visible public supporters, as well as a quiet source of private support during his most difficult moments, but he relies on Camilla in a different and perhaps equally vital way. Those who know them well describe her as the stabilizing force at the center of his personal life, the person who holds him steady when the weight of the crown becomes almost unbearable. One senior aide described the situation plainly. Both women are immovable when they believe they are right. And Charles, for all the authority vested in him by birth and title, finds himself unable to choose between them without losing something he cannot afford to lose. So he has chosen silence. It is a strategy that buys him time, but those closest to the family say it is doing something else as well. It is frustrating both women and quietly deepening the fault lines he is trying to avoid. In the architecture of royal politics, silence is never truly neutral. It is simply a conflict deferred, and this particular conflict can no longer be deferred indefinitely. It is now written into legal documents filed in the name of a princess who has decided that the time for informal agreements is over. Sandringham has always been more than a property. For more than a century, it has been the place where the British monarchy is most authentically itself, away from the ceremonial demands of London, away from the press photographers and the state occasions, and the carefully managed public appearances. It is where the family gathers at Christmas not because protocol demands it, but because they genuinely feel at home there. It is where King George VI spent his final days. It is where Elizabeth II walked the grounds in her final weeks. It is where Philip chose to grow old. It carries the weight of generations. The fact that lawyers are now filing documents about who may or may not occupy which wing of that estate is not a minor procedural development. It is a signal, stark, unmistakable, and deeply uncomfortable, that something fundamental has changed in the way this family operates. The personal ties that once held these informal arrangements together have stretched to breaking point. And Princess Anne, one of the most instinctively private and fiercely traditional members of the royal family, has made the calculation that legal clarity is now more reliable than family trust. Camilla, for her part, will not retreat quietly. At 78, she is more confident in her position as queen than at any previous moment in her life, having survived decades of public hostility to arrive at a place of genuine authority and respect. She will not be easily deterred by a solicitor's letter. The question now hanging over Sandringham is not whether this conflict will continue. It will, but whether it escalates into something publicly visible or finds some private resolution that neither woman fully embraces but both can reluctantly accept. And through all of it, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor remains at Wood Farm, living under the shadow of a police investigation, stripped of his titles, struggling privately in ways that those close to him describe with quiet alarm. Anne stands almost alone in advocating for his dignity within a family that has largely closed ranks against him. It is yet another dimension of a story that is as much about loyalty and abandonment as it is about property and legal rights. Sandringham has seen the monarchy at its most regal and its most raw. It has absorbed grief, scandal, joy, and controversy across more than a century and a half. But what is unfolding within its grounds in 2026 may be among the most consequential chapters in its long history, because this is not just about one summer, it is about who holds power in the House of Windsor when the king steps back. It is about whether a family bound by centuries of duty can hold itself together when the informal bonds that duty once created begin to break. It is about what happens when the people who once governed an empire find themselves unable to govern a single estate without calling in the lawyers. Princess Anne has drawn her line. The documents are filed, the door is sealed, and somewhere on those 20,000 acres of Norfolk parkland, the future of the world's most scrutinized family is quietly, inexorably being decided. Do you think Princess Anne was right to take legal action? Or has she crossed a line that can never truly be undone? The story continues to unfold, and there is far more still to come.